Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and I am the Revolutionary Phenotype. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We have some very interesting stuff coming up for you in the next week or so. There's been a lot of discussion, a little bit of reaction to my recent videos on evolution and the training of biologists and so forth. I wasn't surprised that there was some reaction to it. I was a little bit surprised by who reacted to it. But it's all good. It's all fine. JFG of the public space apparently was talking about one of my recent videos. Somebody asked if I had watched it. No, I haven't. I'm not really inclined to pay much attention to what people say about me. Never have been. When you've been doing commentary as long as I have, you learn that about 80% of what people say about you is not stuff that you particularly want to hear, and very little of it is actually relevant to anything that you've said, anything that you've done, who you are, and so forth. And also, I should mention, no, tonight is not the debate. I am announcing the debate. The debate will be well, let me back up a second. The discussion of JF's book, The Revolutionary Phenotype, is going to be here on this channel on Monday at 7. The actual debate about the theory of evolution by natural selection is going to be on the public space on Wednesday at 7. And so it should be interesting. I'm looking forward to both. I'm actually reading The Revolutionary Phenotype right now. What I meant by me being the revolutionary phenotype, it would actually be more accurate to say I am the revolutionary genotype, because I'm descended from two American revolutionaries on my father's side and a Mexican revolutionary on my mother's side. So I literally have revolution in the blood. 88 Versetti says, thank you for all you do, Vox. Just finished listening to Friday's Darkstream on evolution. I'm excited to buy some of your published work. That's great. Thank you. But just be aware that I haven't written anything on evolution per se. I deal with just a little bit of it On the Existence of Gods, which was a previous debate with an atheist from the blog. But, we'll see. So, anyhow, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm genuinely interested in JF's book, and I'm not saying that to be polite. I'm not saying that to stoke your interest in the debate or anything. He has some interesting ideas. I think that the debate is going to be somewhat revelatory to a lot of people, because I am not inclined to use other people's arguments. I'm not inclined to simply repeat things that others have said many times before. It was kind of interesting on the blog today. I actually slapped down a few of my readers because they were saying, well, you have to read this, or you have to read that, or you need to study this before your debate. And I said, no, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm interested in getting my ideas tested criticized, attacked by somebody who is recognized as knowing something about the subject. And so, I think that this is an interesting opportunity to see some of these ideas attacked, to see some of these ideas criticized. And, it's going to be a lot harder for people who are inclined to simply dismiss stuff that they don't even understand. It's going to be a lot harder for them to do that if they see somebody who they respect and who they appreciate and who they feel knows about the subject isn't able to deal effectively with the aspects of the conversation that are being raised. Eleutheria Bear says, kickstart money to throw Bernie Sanders into the Chilean Sea. Bonus if it's from a helicopter. Yeah, an answer, actually, that first super chat raises the point that, or the question that somebody else just asked. The super chats for the discussion of JF's book will go to this channel. The super chats during the debate will go to JF. And so, but I would encourage you to, understand that, that we're having the debate. Obviously he'll want to address those questions and stuff at the end, but keep in mind that it's not about a Q&A. But see, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. JetRPG22 says, watch JF versus Jay Dyer on Warski Live. He says that they're more than... I'm not paying any attention to what JF's debate tendencies are. I'm not focusing on winning this debate. It's not really that relevant to what my intentions are. If the ideas that I am expressing, if the skepticism that I have generated is based on false foundations, I want to know that. I want to, I don't want to be caught building up ideas on a false foundation. And, perhaps he is capable of addressing that and dealing with that. Perhaps not. There's only one way to find out. And, I think that's what, when we talked about it, we talked about, originally he'd said something about, debating his book. And I said, I don't want to debate your book. I want to talk about your book. I want to ask you questions about your book and learn more about some of these ideas and see how they might be relevant to where things are going and that sort of thing. I know everybody likes conflict, and I'm sure there will be some intellectual conflict when we get to the debate portion. But there's a lot of interesting stuff to discuss. And one of the things that I want to do with the Bookstream elements are bring more authors on, talk to more authors about what they're writing about. And one thing that you'll notice about my interviews, I have a lot of interviews that are linked on the blog on the left side there. And what you'll see is that I don't play prosecutor. I don't, no, Grandarf, he said you should really watch JF's books. He answered many of your questions. For instance, what is the rate of evolution and others? I just wait. Okay. I absolutely guarantee that, he hasn't addressed these things because as far as I can tell, literally no one has. Yeah, actually, M. Anthony Dunn comments, Vox, since your first evolution video, I started watching lectures and interviews by geneticists who are creationists, and they affirm what you were saying. Nobody actually studies speciation. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. There are a number of people who are studying the interesting and actually relevant aspects of speciation, but none of them are looking at it from the perspective. I shouldn't say none. Very, very few of them are looking at it from the perspective that I'm interested in. There are a few, and I've drawn upon them in order to formulate my questions, and they provide some elements of the basis of my argument, to the extent that it's an argument and not just a question. Anaf Habib says, no need to consult or watch anything to quote unquote prepare. Just stick to your guns. Just give us your full effort and B, your full drive. Here's to your future quote unquote victory, uncovering of solid foundations. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've actually had a good time working out. I mean, it was kind of funny because I was working on this. Sundin 564 says, if I give you 20, will you stop this stream to write a Sea of Skulls? I'm working on a Sea of Skulls, okay? Don't worry about it. It's going great. And A Throne of Bones is going to be out in audiobook sooner than you think. So, but the thing is that I've been having, although what I was saying is I've been having a good time working on the mathematical formula that we needed in order to create the foundation for my query. And what was really interesting about that was that the mathematician with whom I was working started arguing with me. And, we were discussing it got quite heated. We were discussing about the philosophical structure of it. And he said, well, but, in order to do this properly, we need to work in, this element and that element. And I said, well, yes, obviously we do, to gain a fuller understanding, but we don't need to go to that length now. We're already at a point where I'm going to have to, query JF and make sure that we have what we're dealing with here is actually relevant in the orthodox theory, in the orthodox theoretical sense. And so that's what I'm interested in doing. If it's, if your foundations are philosophically correct, if you can confirm that they're in line with the orthodoxy, then you have a much more powerful case to work with. And so, the whole point is not to leap immediately to trying to prove anything. You have to ask questions. You have to understand how these things work. M. Anthony Dunn asks, do you think JF would actually give your ideas a fair shake? People tend to shut down when their foundational beliefs are attacked. I think that he would reject my, shall we say, potential conclusions out of hand. I don't fully accept them. Not yet. But I do think that he is sufficiently open-minded on the basis of what I've read in his book. I think that he is probably sufficiently open-minded enough to realize that there are some interesting questions there, and that the potential answers to those interesting questions raise some very, very interesting possibilities. No, Grandarf, I'm not going to talk about the potential conclusions. That's exactly the point. If I were to, this is why I find it's so frustrating sometimes when you're talking to people, because they're saying, well, just tell me the end. Just tell me the end. Just tell me what it is. And if you're foolish enough to tell them, then they immediately start demanding your sources. They immediately start, I mean, this is why when people say, tell me your sources, I just say no. Because anytime I'm dealing with somebody who is demanding a source, the first reaction to being told what the source is to immediately try to discredit and disqualify the source. You already know you're not dealing with somebody who really wants to understand. Somebody who wants to understand is not demanding that you leap to the end so they can start attacking it. And so, there is a certain amount of power to the Socratic method. Now you have to be careful with it because Socrates himself was incredibly dishonest with it. You have to actually ask, or you have to ask honest questions. You can't just jump past steps, hope that they don't ask you about it, hope they don't catch you on it, and then just carry on like that. That's what Socrates does, and he's not honest. It's always funny to me when people say, "I'd like to see somebody debate somebody." I mean, I don't know who Aron Ra is. It's not a. I don't know what the point would be. Septius says the argument about natural selection being tautological is better than it doesn't exist. If Vox is saying that natural selection isn't useful because it is mathematically too general, then that might... Look, why don't... I mean, it's fine for you to discuss these things, but just wait. When people interrupt me in my personal life because they're trying to do the thing where they finish your sentence for you, it often amuses me to stop talking. Let them say what they say, and then I tell them, you're wrong. Would you like me to tell you what I was actually going to say? It is fairly unusual that people are able to successfully anticipate what I'm going to say, whether it's in this context or in a personal context. Slammerai Jamdown says, excited. Your debate on free trade was a good read. Well, the good thing is that JF has actually agreed to let me publish the debate after we do it. So if it's interesting enough, I will do so, regardless of whether I come off well or not. All I really care about with that type of little debate book is whether it's interesting. I had no intention whatsoever. I mean, I had no intention of publishing on the question of free trade with James Miller, but it was just such an interesting debate and so useful that we did that, and the book actually did rather well. We did the same thing with On the Existence of Gods. It's more popular as an audiobook. It wasn't an audiobook of the debate because it was a written debate, but it makes for pretty good reading. Richard Wynn says, I will psychonetically maintain a symbiotic harmony between all nations, and I will put you at the bottom of the set of all possible power hierarchies. Bucko. We clearly have a Jordan Peterson fan in the house. Welcome. Granddaughter says, sorry, my goal wasn't to discredit you in any way, shape, or form. I was just curious to know what you're implying. I was going off on a tangent from what you said. I was not thinking that you were doing that. But here's the thing, because a lot of you don't know me very well yet. I don't. If I want to tell you, I will. If I am implying something and I'm not spelling it out, I'm not going to. So if you can see that I'm talking around something, don't bother asking about it. I'm not going, it's not my intention to talk about it. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a precursor about something that's going to be coming down the road. Like, for example, Owen Benjamin apparently teased something that he and I are working on together with a couple other folks. It's going to be really big. It's something that I think that you're all going to be stoked about. I hope it's something that a lot of you will want to get behind and support. But it's too big for us to talk about until it's ready to announce. And so, but we are working hard on it. And I think that, Owen is psyched about it. I'm definitely psyched about it. But it's too early to talk about. I mean, it's too early to tell you about it other than to let you know cool stuff is coming. Stay tuned. You're leaving Patreon. LOL. I'm not on Patreon, so I don't know what that would mean. Let's see. Vox, what do you think about shifting timelines and how we've shifted out of chaos? I don't buy it. I mean, sometimes the whole Mandela effect does make me wonder if there might be something to it, but generally speaking, no. I don't buy into the timeline stuff. And frankly, I don't know how we would figure out that was the case, even if it was. The shiny object meant to get your money. You just watch the commercial, wait to buy the product. Five Finger Full Price at Vox already left Patreon to support Sargon. No, I've never been on Patreon, ever. It's just anyhow. JF is IQ 140 according to him, so a midwit. 140 is not a midwit. Midwits are in the 115, 120 range. It was more for Warhammer 40. I'm a Warhammer fantasy battle guy. I don't know Warhammer 40K that well. Sasquatch Bear of the Dread Ilk. Wow, we have a Dread Ilk bear. That's just frightening. If I only had a quarter of your energy, the amount of cookie jars you're in. You have no idea. I was very proud of myself today because we had our high intensity course today, and it was tough. I mean, it was really tough. But it's great because it really keeps you in shape. It really forces you to work hard, and it's always funny when the younger guys are like, "Damn, how old are you?" So, Watchman 245 says, "I've been thinking a lot about Owen's banning and members only chat. For a comedian, you would think he was more accustomed to hecklers. I just find it a little strange. It's not strange at all. If Owen had the number of hecklers at a live event that he had trolls and ankle biters and attention whores on his chats, he wouldn't be able to do live shows. It's distracting, it's obnoxious, and I don't think that he should tolerate it for a second. I wouldn't tolerate it myself. The members only stuff is great. I wish that I had the option to do members only stuff. I wouldn't do just members only stuff. I'd probably do it once a week, but I can't do it until we have like 30,000 subscribers. So that's why it's been great to see. I think yesterday, like, there was something like 372 new subscribers. It's not about silencing people, or it's not about being afraid of new ideas or anything like that. The problem is that there are some people who are just not adequately socialized to behave in these situations. I mean, I've been dealing with trolls and stuff for 14 years now. 2003 we started. So 16 years on the blog, I've been dealing with this. And there's just a certain percentage of people, it's fairly small, but they're totally out of control. They have no social skills whatsoever. They're obnoxious and they always attempt to hijack the mic. And you can't permit them. If you allow them entry, they will take over and ruin a comment section every single time. And, you know, when people were complaining about my, when they were complaining about my being too harsh on the moderation on the blog, what I did to demonstrate this was I said, fine. All right, you want to see what it looks like? I am taking off all the moderation, turning off all the controls, opening it all up. Have fun. And within 12 hours, the very people who had been complaining and telling me that it was too limited and I was afraid of this and this, that, they were begging me to turn the controls back on. And I just laughed at them and left it on for left it open for another 12 hours. The comments were totally unreadable. And so, you know, when you look at this, when you look at the options, and you know, the problem that I have is 1/10 the problem that Owen had facing. You know, he's got up to 6,000 people on at a time. It's too many to keep under control otherwise. No, you're wrong. This is ridiculous. He says, yeah, but it all ends up butt kissers at cult. No, it doesn't. That's absolutely ludicrous. What we have on at VP, what we've done successfully for 16 years is absolutely not a cult. I mean, okay, the bit about the vile faceless minions and mindless obedience and all that, that does sound a little bit cultish, but it's not. And we've built a lot of things together. Infogalactic was built by that community. We've got a big announcement that is not related to the Owen one also coming next week. I mean, huge announcement. And so, and that's another thing that we did together. Archaven is something that we've all done together. I may be the nexus, but I'm only one part of it. And you can't do that. You can't build that kind of community. You can't build those kind of bonds that allow for a strong foundation to build positive things if you're allowing these trolls and ankle biters and attention whores to distract and infuriate and turn off everybody. Cave Bear Chris. Hey, Cave Bear Chris. If you and Owen have a joint project, it can't help but be freaking awesome. Hope it's a cage match with Toe Rogan and Jordan Peterless. That would be hilarious. That would be absolutely hilarious. Reluctant Messiah knows what's up. Let's see, there's a question here that I was going to... I bet the swastika spam is from bots. Entirely possible. You know, but we just keep that stuff out. Matt says, I miss the old days of Owen's stream when we only had like 500 people and we all knew each other in the Bear Discord. Well, you know, I mean, we actually have a private Facebook group for the original Dread Ilk. I'm not even a member. But we actually use it, you know, for important stuff. And so whenever something, you know, if I want to communicate with the, you know, the OGs, I have a way of doing so, and it's kept to them. And then, of course, with the VFM, that's all just, you know, we all have private communication there as well. And so you have to do this stuff. You just can't leave everything open, because also that's where your enemies go. I guarantee there are at least 30 people who follow, you know, Owen's stream every night. There's probably a couple of them have actually paid for membership that are, you know, tracking him for the SPLC or whatever. But I mean, it's the price you pay. But you say, well, now it's too big. No, now Owen is able to do stuff that he couldn't even dream of doing before. It's fantastic. It's great. It's good. You know, every now and then the Dread Ilk lament a little bit, but they're not only excited about the way things have changed. You know, a number of them are my lieutenants now running whole sections of things themselves. And so it works out really well. You just have, because if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not expanding, you're becoming more irrelevant, or you're becoming more internally focused. And so that's why, I didn't want to go onto video. I didn't want to do this. I had people encouraging me to do this 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And so, when they finally, they pushed, pulled, and paid me to actually start doing this stuff, I was dubious that I could do it. I don't have the looks for video. I don't have a voice for radio. I'm a writer. I say all the lot. I talk slow, etc., etc. I know all those things. It doesn't bother me. I'm not likely to change any of them. But people found the ideas useful. They found the discourse valuable. So those Dread Ilk who pushed me to do so, because they said, look, you're never going to reach the larger portion of the people with your books because most people don't read. Fine. So I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. And there we go. William Late has a good point. Being respectful does not equal butt kissing. Wolfman at Large says mod-free Spurgout Day should be an annual Vox Populi tradition. Everybody hated it so much. I think the only person who enjoyed it was me, because I was just so sick of everybody bitching. Not everybody. I was so sick of the usual suspects bitching and whining about it that just seeing how horrified they were by the results. The moderators were, actually, that's not true. The moderators were also amused. That was funny. Ben Darling says, these idiots say things on the internet that they'd never dare to say in real life or even by phone. I was listening to Jacob Rees-Mogg's radio show, and the SJWs were just texting rather than phoning him. Well, that's true too. That's also true too. Conflagrationist Chris, I like the name, says, great job wrecking Peterson. Bravo. Thanks very much. I hear there's a good video out. You should all check it out. Some folks were theorizing that it was influenced by Jordanetics. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I think it was by Reactionary Europe, but apparently it actually got under Peterson's skin in a way that that the book didn't, because he actually responded to it on Twitter, which doesn't surprise me, because when you think about it, Peterson's fans don't read his book. They don't read books. So the video, especially one that was as popular as that one, was much more likely to damage him in the eyes of his fans and his viewers. Ty Gorton says, there's no viable evolution debate. Only those who blindly accept scientism versus those who take personal responsibility for what they believe. I don't think that's true. And I think that we'll be able to show you otherwise next Wednesday. So we'll see. Control-Alt-Debug says, you're smart. I'm sure you will develop that public speaking skill. Actually, I'm pretty good when it's public speaking in person. But that's very different than talking at a camera. They're two different things. I've never had any trouble public speaking. I think I actually won. I entered a competition once. We had a speech. I think I had a speech class in high school, and you had, as part of the class, you actually had to go and enter some competition. And I remember I won the first level, and I think I won the second level, and then I just didn't bother going to the thing at state because I had no actual interest in it. I was just doing it for the class. But Vox D'Souza has your point that a book has less reach. He solved that problem by making a movie. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's what Cernovich is doing. Mike is taking it to the next level. You got to respect that. Let's see. I can't wait an entire week. Yeah, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Barbarian Missionary actually has a good question. Why engage in a debate? Why would you put it in quotes? It's a debate. When you beforehand declared yourself not competent in the field. By the way, the acquired mechanistic immune function is arguably more inclined towards Evo theory than anything else, in my opinion. Well, that's the interesting thing. According to your perspective and the average person's perspective, I shouldn't be able to raise any points that are difficult for an expert like JF to address, right? So why would I engage in a debate? Well, because this isn't the first time that I have engaged in a debate with somebody who is an expert in the field, who knows far more about it than I do. And, we'll see how it goes. But in this debate, you can read the book. I think there might even be an audiobook of it. This was a debate that I did on free trade with a PhD professor of economics. He got his PhD at the University of Chicago, which is the premier freshwater economics school. Chicago and MIT are the two best United States economics universities. And he freely admitted during the debate that he had never, ever encountered the arguments that I presented, and he actually found them rather persuasive. So why do I dare to do it? Because, I'm afraid we're going to have to annoy those people, but this is what highly intelligent people do. We have ideas that are not necessarily obvious to most other people. And so we'll see. I could be wrong. My points against free trade could have been wrong. They weren't. They held up. We'll see if my points about evolution do or not. Al Rifai says, keep killing it. The world needs more people like you. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support. And, this is just what I enjoy doing. I like the pressure of having to defend my ideas. I don't really like just shooting the breeze and throwing ideas out there and never testing them and never seriously discussing them. And, I like having to articulate what I'm thinking. I mean, this is how you write books and stuff. This is how you formulate the foundation of them, because if it passes the test, then you're onto something. And if it fails, then you know that you don't need to waste your time on it. I mean, evolution is not a area of particular interest to me. I just, somebody says something, I read something, it makes it, a thought or two crosses your mind. Maybe you do something with it, maybe you don't. But, it happens 3-4 times. I mean, you got to keep in mind, the only reason that I read all those books on evolution was because I was writing a critique of Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett. And they write a lot about evolution. Well, I'm not going to write a book criticizing people if I haven't read everything that they've written. So I read all their books. That raised some doubts, because here I was destroying their arguments about atheism and secular humanism. And I wondered, well, are there arguments any better? Are there arguments about evolution any better? And I read them, and for the most part, they weren't. So, Slamurai Jamdown says, being an expert in the field can blind you to obvious arguments. The medical community is a good example of this. That's very true. You see it in economics all the time. I was really disappointed with Bob Murphy, whose textbook I like, whose textbook I've recommended for homeschoolers, because he was just so close-minded about the topic. He didn't want he almost wasn't listening to what I was saying, as far as I could tell. Al Rafai, I think he might have made a mistake because he did it twice, but he said, here's another one for being a BAMF, which I assume stands for Brilliantly Autistic Master Facilitator. Is that right? I doubt that. Anyhow, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Sean Bozeman said, former Satanist Roger Morneau stated regarding evolutionists that Satan gives them great power to induce spiritual blindness, to convince, and to convert. What are your thoughts on this? God bless. Well, I don't know that despite being a Satanist, Mr. Morneau necessarily knows much about what Satan actually does. I mean, maybe, but I think that the case for evolution is a fairly obvious one. You know, it is a perfectly sensible, perfectly rational, and logical idea. And so I can see why it was persuasive to a lot of people, especially when the obvious objections to it, well, the Earth isn't old enough, there's not enough time for that to have happened, where are the fossils and so forth, when they began to find elements and signs to support it. Now, of course, Piltdown Man turned out to be a fraud. There's a tremendous amount of fraud related to it. I mean, it's kind of funny. The most famous scientific alum from my university, Mark Hauser, somebody that Bucknell University was very proud of. You know, he was a professor professor of biology at Harvard, the author of the book Moral Minds, which was it was on the verge of becoming a big deal in the sort of Daniel Dennett sense. And then, of course, it turned out that he turned out to have committed a lot of fraud. And so, you know, it's so common in that field. You would think that it would concern, that aspect of it would concern people more. But anyhow, Vox does like red wine, no question. Let's see. Does anyone in the chat know why he named this the Darkstream? Because I was nicknamed the Supreme Dark Lord by some of the authors in my circle. John C. Wright actually wrote a hilarious tribute that I'm not even going to try to explain to you, but look it up sometime. And what happened was that during the Hugo Awards debacle, we were attacked relentlessly by the entire science fiction community. The Wall Street Journal actually named me the most despised man in science fiction, and all the other authors were being attacked too. And so John Wright wrote this amusing piece. I should see if I can find the cartoon. He wrote this amusing piece where he gave everybody names, like Larry Correa was the International Lord of Hate. Sarah Hoyt was the beautiful but evil space princess. And I mean, the whole thing was hilarious. Let me see if I can find, we actually did a cartoon of it. It's in SJW's Always Lie. So if you've read it, you've seen it, but a lot of you probably haven't. Let me see if I can find it here. Need to change this to thumbnails just so I can see what is. Okay, there we go. I think this is it. No, that's not it. Where is it? I think this might be it. Yeah. So this was the drawing of the of what they called the evil legion of the original evil legion of evil. You can see John C. right there with his fedora. You can see the Sad Puppies logo in the middle. Of course, I'm the Supreme Dark Lord sitting on my dark throne. There's Larry Correa. Larry Correa, by the way, is a giant. He's I don't know if he's taller. I don't think he's taller than Owen, but he probably outweighs him by 50 pounds. And then that's Tom Kratman right there. And I think that we had another version that had Sarah Hoyt in it. But yeah, that's so anyhow, that's where that came from. So let's see. Missing a. Okay, I think I missed a chat here somewhere. I'll find it over here. Dun, dun, dun. One of these days, I actually should organize my windows before I start at Darkstream. That would probably save everybody some time. Sorry about that. So, okay. Oh no, I guess I didn't miss one. Good. Never mind. Let's see here. So that's why I named it. Somebody asked about the debate. The debate is Monday and Wednesday. Vox, what's your relationship with Rollo Tomasi? We've never met, but we have we had a mutual interest in the topics that we were addressing at the time. When I was running Alpha Game, I actually I stopped doing Alpha Game because I got really tired of all the what about meism and people trying to come to me for my advice and concerns about their personal relationships. I'm not a an agony ant or an Ann Landers or whatever you want to call it. And so it turned out that was most of the discussion there. And so I couldn't take it anymore. Al Rafai has some actual questions. Okay, I have some actual questions. Do you have any opinions on the anti-vax movement? Yes. Also, what do you think about the legalization of marijuana and other drugs? Thanks again. I am a combination of a vaccine skeptic and a vaccine, what's the best way to put it? I believe in the European model where you give fewer vaccines over more time. I have actually seen an infant have a vaccine reaction. It's not a joke. They do happen. It scares the crap out of the pediatricians when it happens. Okay? So the whole idea that, oh, it's just, herd immunity and we should just give it to everyone. No. That's absolutely a fundamentally bureaucratic and evil way to look at it. Each child is precious to their parents, and you cannot and should not force them to take those kind of risks. Moreover, most of the claims of the pro-vaccine crowd are false. All you have to do is look at the actual statistics, and you can see that most of those killer diseases are not the same, are not the threat that they were claimed to be. And you can see that because almost all of the infectious disease deaths that people used to suffer stopped before the vaccines were even available. Now, that doesn't mean that all vaccines are bad or that all vaccines are unnecessary, but a lot of them are functionally unnecessary. And frankly, it's ridiculous too to claim, part of the vaccine crowd pushing the vaccine stuff is to cover the fact that immigration is dangerous, that immigration is potentially deadly. Almost all of the illnesses and so forth that have been imported and that are coming back is because of immigration. It's not because of anti-vaccine people. Furthermore, there is a lot of corruption and very questionable science on the part of the pharmaceutical companies. And so the mere fact that they had to make the vaccine companies immune to legal responsibility for their products should give anybody pause. I would not, what's the best way to put it? But at the same time, let me point out that we are supporting the efforts of the Crohn's vaccine. We've been actively supporting, and the blog has been actively supporting the Crohn's vaccine. And in fact, if you are a resident of the UK and you're healthy and you're willing to have the Crohn's vaccine tested on you, shoot me an email and I'll get it to the people who are running that program. They're actively looking for volunteers in the UK right now, healthy volunteers, so that they can, it's past all the animal trials. This is the healthy human trials, and then they'll go into the trials of people who actually have Crohn's. And hopefully this is both a vaccine and a cure. So, it's not a binary issue. It's like saying, are you an anti-surgery person? Well, I'm against surgery when people don't need it. So, this is true. I read recently that the Italian government fired their vaccine board, tested the vaccines, and found out that they didn't contain the antigens that they were supposed to vaccinate against. Yeah, I'm aware of that. And there's a lot of things to be skeptical about anytime you have government, and anytime you have an intersection of government and money, you need to be particularly suspicious and aware. Drew M has a question. Are you familiar with JF's videos with Frame Game Radio? They were helpful in exposing the civil rights law as a thinly veiled extortion racket. No, I'm not familiar with those, but they are, it's definitely true. The SPLC and the Anti-Defamation League are absolutely scams. What about for ulcerative colitis? No, this is specifically for Crohn's disease. It's actually a really interesting question. Apparently, Crohn's and a similar disease, which is called, I think, Jones disease, which affects cattle, they are very, very similar to both the tuberculosis and the leprosy viruses or something. And so, this is all a very new thing, because scientists did not believe that Crohn's was a virus. And so, they thought that it was, just like the way that they thought ulcers were caused by something other than bacteria, it looks like this might be as effective a cure for Crohn's as they now have for ulcers. And so hopefully it will, obviously we have some personal attachment to folks with Crohn's, and so that's why we've been involved in this. And like I said, if you're in the UK and you're healthy and you're interested in helping out the cause, please feel free to shoot me an email, voxday@gmail.com. I will pass it directly on to the scientists involved. And so John Kelly says, interested in a Darkstream dedicated to homeschooling. I found the comment that your son did a maths degree fascinating. I have many children homeschooling myself. That's great. That's great. let's see. So it's kind of interesting to me too when I hear people telling me that, you're anti-science, you're anti-vaccines. And I'm like, I've actually probably done more for science and vaccine research, and certainly Space Bunny has, than just about anybody who has tried to criticize us on those subjects. Again, these things are not binary issues. They're not, it's not black and white. And so you need to analyze the situation in its entirety. So, Vox, if the Vietnam War was such a bad war, why isn't the Korean War thought of in the same way? Probably because it wasn't, people don't remember it the same way. It wasn't as big a deal. Jilly Bear says, my opinion of the whole gluten celiac disease is that 3/4 of them have a mental disorder, not celiac disease. No, that's just not true. I know very well a girl with celiac disease, and there's absolutely no question that she reacts physically to gluten. If you even use, give her the same plate that bread gluten has been on, she'll have a stomach ache within an hour or so. And she does not, and not because she knows, she has no idea. So it is a real thing, but it's very bizarre to me that it has become more of a problem. So I don't know if that's possibly related to vaccinations or if it's possibly related to changes in the kind of wheat that we're eating. I don't know. Vox, have you seen some of the allegedly awful things that Nigel Farage has said about the EDL? I'm vaguely aware of it, but I don't really care. I think the EDL and they're basically the British Labour Party that actually cares about immigration. So, and I do think that you want to be cautious about eating wheat and that sort of thing. I mean, I lost 5 kilos or so just when I didn't even stop, but I just cut down on my carbohydrates in my bread eating. And so, let's see. DJ Link says, tax return day. Figured I'd hit you with some Birch Gold. Thank you. Did you use codename Shapiro? That's funny. No, Jilly Bear, I don't think you don't have to apologize. You didn't offend me, and I don't think that you'd offend, they understand how crazy it sounds sometimes. I mean, we actually have another friend who is like insanely allergic to all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're talking like anaphylactic shock allergic. And I don't remember anybody being allergic to anything when I was a kid. Certainly our parents were not trying to feed us healthy the way that parents often are today. Jesse Jamie says, I've read that celiac disease has become so rampant due to GMO wheat crops, raising gluten level in bread from about 5% to 50%. I mean, something like that. I mean, I think that that's probably it's a likely culprit. Let's put it that way. So, well, hey, thanks very much for tuning in. If you're interested in picking up this book on the question of free trade, it's out. I've also got a link to The Revolutionary Phenotype, which is JF's book, and it's on the link below the video. You can check it out. We actually have it at the Castelia Direct Store, so shop around, see if there's any other books that you might like. It all supports the cause, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to subscribe. And Otherwise, I wish you a good evening, and I will look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. I'm Vox Day. This is the Darkstream.